running right now. So
Oh, wait, really?
we are talking about right now.
Wait, is it actually going?
Yes.
Oh, lights, camera, fractions.
Okay. So we're talking about factoring
Gary's asking me to do it.
by grouping. Is there a question?
What about the homework? What about the homework? Yeah.
Just put it aside for a second.
I'll put it up here.
Actually, why don't you turn it in tomorrow? Use it for tonight as well, so that you've got it as a, so you can remind yourself what you did wrong, Ben.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, I know.
All right. So we're continuing factoring by grouping, but we're going to do something. We're going to actually, when groups are separated by a negative. Okay, that works. All right, so in the past, I gave you something like, last night's homework, I gave you something where you had two groups, right? And there was a plus sign in between them, right? Remember that? So I'll just do one real fast. So this is one where it's positive, not negative. So let's say we have x cubed plus x squared plus 2x plus 2. Okay, here's my two groups of two. And notice, where is something colorful? Well, notice that is a plus sign, right?
Yeah.
And it's really easy to factor these when it's a plus sign. It's really easy. When that is a minus sign, it gets a little more complicated. For the plus sign, we know it's x squared is my greatest common factor. So x plus 1 plus 2, x plus 1. So I'm finally done. I'm doing this really fast because you guys know how to do it. Okay? So we're done. Right? You know how to do those now, right? It's pretty straightforward. Now, let's try one, though, where it is a negative sign. Okay?
Hey, Karen, how did you get a plus 1 for the second one?
Say what?
How did you get a plus 1 for the second one?
1 times
Because x
L
squared.
squared.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wait, what did I do wrong?
Nothing.
Oh, wait, I did right? Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
I was just wondering.
Okay. So now let's look at one that has a negative sign. How about 15x minus 20 minus 6x squared plus 8x? All right, we still have our groups, right? Our groups of two. It's 4 terms, 1, 2, 3, 4. So whenever there are 4 terms and you're asked to factor them, you always try grouping first, always, okay? And I've actually always said, I've also said I call factoring out the greatest common factor the cardinal rule of factoring. It's not called that in any book, but it's my rule. The cardinal rule meaning like the most important rule there is about factoring. The first thing you always try is factoring out the greatest common factor, right? But factoring by grouping, when you have groups of 4, is factoring out the greatest common factor. Do you realize that? You see, we're just breaking it down into smaller pieces. A group of 2, and I'm going to factor out the greatest common factor. A group of 2, I'm going to factor out the greatest common factor. And then I'm going to have another greatest common factor, which is a blob, which I'm going to factor out, right? See what I'm saying? So that's what you're doing when you're doing this. You're doing the cardinal rule of factoring, which is factoring out the greatest common factor. So what would be my greatest common factor here?
5.
So I put 5 parentheses, and then I have, let me think, what am I doing? 3x minus 4, right? Now, unfortunately, I have this doggone negative sign here, right? And I'm going to put I'm going to bring that down. I got to put a negative sign here. Now, what is my greatest common factor here? 2x, right? There's an x in both of them and also a 2. So 2x. And I'm going to put a parenthesis. And what would I, now,
3x.
so, okay, 3x, right? And then what?
Minus 4? Yeah, minus 4.
How'd you get minus 4?
Because
Plus
the
4.
negative plus.
No,
It's
no,
minus
factor
4.
it out.
It's minus 4 because when you divide a positive by negative, then it's a negative.
Very nice, Ben. I'm very impressed. So this, whatever this, notice here, the negative sign does not affect that at all. Why? There's no,
You're just dividing it.
it's just it's just minus 6x squared and then plus 8x. This negative sign has nothing to do with this plus sign. Now, why does this negative sign now have something to do with this sign?
Because you're dividing it.
Because now you're dividing it or multiplying it,
Wait, but
whichever way you're thinking about it. If you're thinking of, you've got to think of that as negative 2x, 8x, positive 8x minus 2x is going to be negative, negative, negative. I'll now write it in black because I don't know if you can see the green on that thing.
Wait, but then.
Got to be negative 4.
Wait, but then wouldn't it be a negative 3 too? Because you're still dividing the middle.
Well, no, it's negative 6x squared
Oh,
divided
yeah.
by negative 2x, right?
Yeah.
So then suddenly, so you can always, for me, sometimes it's easier to think of it in terms of my distributive property. You know what I'm saying? I think of it, okay, negative 2x times positive 3x gives me negative 6x squared. Negative 2x times, it's got to be negative to get a positive. Negative times negative is positive. So when you do these, when the negative sign is in the middle, then whatever sign this is going to be the opposite here. Because you're putting it in parentheses, and this is going to be multiplied times each thing inside. Whatever you get here has to, when you multiply it out, has to come back to this, right? So this sign here, if this is positive, as soon as you put a parentheses here, it's going to turn negative. If this sign was negative, as soon as you put the parentheses, this is going to be positive, right?
Yeah.
But the common mistake is this is what happens. People do it and they think 3x minus 4, 3x plus 4. And then they say, oh shoot, we don't have blobs that match. But we do. That's when you start asking, oh, was there a negative sign in the middle between the two groups? Oh yeah, and so did I change this sign from here? I didn't. And so you can change it to a negative and suddenly it works, right? So I can go now one step further. I have greatest common factors that are now blobs, right?
So it's 3x minus 4.
3x minus 4, parenthesis,
Parenthesis 5 minus 2x.
5 minus 2x.
And that's your answer.
And you're done.
It's
Does that make sense? You see that? Fist to 5. Did you understand the point? Okay. Awesome. This is really an important thing to understand, so that you see that. All right, so that's it. It's just a small little lecture,
Hope you
and
enjoy.
wow, that's amazing.